Hey friends, it's Peggy Hall here. Did you know that public health is a local issue? It is a community issue. It is a state issue. It is actually not a national or federal issue. And here's why. There is a law under the Federal Laws and Regulations, Title 42, that actually spells out that public health and welfare is relegated legally to the most local authority in the area. I live in Orange County, and we have an Orange County public health agency. And that local health agency is the agency that has the legal jurisdiction for issuing public orders related to public health. Their charter is to safeguard the public health. And you can actually find your local agency for public health on the internet. And you can find it might be a county agency, it might be a city agency. Where I live, Orange County, it is the Orange County Department of Health that oversees our public health orders and safeguards the public. And it makes sense because each community is different. I live in Orange County. It's very different than San Francisco. It's very different than New York. We have a different climate. We have a different environment. We have different air quality, water quality. I don't ride a subway. There is not a lot of heavy industry spewing toxic gases into the air. I'm not going up into a high-rise building on an elevator with a lot of other people. We have a lot of sunshine throughout the year, so we live outdoors. We have beaches and parks in close proximity. We have excellent medical care and health resources that are available to all. Those are just a few of the resources and factors that impact local health. That's why where I live in Orange County, I'm not worried about the crime rate in New York, and I'm not worried about the weather in San Francisco. The crime rate and the weather and the cost of housing and the amount of traffic and the length of a commute and so many other things are unique to that community. And public health is one of them. So the reason why I mention that is because people are confused, it seems, from what I've noticed, about the role of the federal government in our health. The federal government does not have the legal authority to put forth orders and regulations related to individual states and localities. Now, let me talk for a moment about the state. I live in California, and the governor declared a state of emergency on May 4th. Today, on March 4th. Today, as I record this message, it is May 6th. That is approximately 63 days going into our state of emergency declaration. What is a state of emergency declaration? The governor of any state cannot just declare a state of emergency because he or she feels like it. That is actually regulated by law. And in California, we have something called the California Emergency Services Act. It was recently updated in 2015. So this law is recent, and we have a section in that law that states, it's section 8558B, that states the governor can only declare a state of emergency under certain circumstances. If they're and I can read that for you because I actually have the law right here. And it says that a state of emergency means the duly proclaimed existence of conditions of disaster or extreme peril to the safety of persons and property within the state caused by such conditions as air pollution, fire, flood, storm, epidemic, riot, drought, sudden or severe energy shortage, a plant or animal infestation of disease, or if we have a warning about an earthquake or a volcano. Those are the only conditions under which the governor can declare a state of emergency. I read further into the law, says that this threat, by reason of its magnitude, is likely to be beyond the control of the services, personnel, equipment, and facilities of any single county or city. And therefore, we need the combined mutual aid of the entire state to combat this threat. Okay, so now we look at what is an epidemic. The legal grounds for the governor of California to declare the state of emergency is based on an epidemic. So let's look. What is an epidemic? An epidemic is beyond the normal range. Beyond the normal range. So an epidemic means that there is a threat of disease or illness that is beyond the normal range of what we typically have. Now, in California, the flu season runs from about October to April or May. All right, we're May 6th. So we're very much at the end of a typical flu season. California has a population of 40 million people. I know it's huge. We're the third largest state by geography, and we are like the eighth largest. If we were a country, we'd be the eighth largest country in the world. So it's a huge state, 40 million people. In the typical flu season, which goes through May, there are approximately 6,000 flu-related deaths every year. And I got this information from the State Department of Health. You can get the information from your State Department of Health because your State Department of Health is the repository of all of the data related to disease and illness and death and other data relating to the population. So typically in California, 6,000 people die of flu-related illnesses every year. This year, with COVID, there have been 2,000 deaths. This is COVID, this is the flu. 2,000 is 1/3 the number of 6,000. 6,000 is 3 times 2,000. So therefore, in California, this might be different in your state. I'm speaking about California. In California, COVID is not an epidemic. I said that public health is local. So let's look at my local community. I live in Orange County. 3.3 million people in Orange County. That's also larger than many states. Orange County has more people than many states do. In Orange County, the typical number of flu-related deaths is approximately 600 in a flu season. We are just at the end of the flu season. In California, in Orange County, we have had 38 COVID-related deaths. 38 COVID. Typical season, which ends now. 600 flu. This is not an epidemic. If the numbers were reversed, it clearly would be an epidemic. COVID is not an epidemic in Orange County. COVID is not an epidemic in California. Your numbers may be different. Public health is a local issue, not a federal or national issue, and certainly not a global issue. Local. This is in California. Very clearly, COVID, regular flu, COVID is not an epidemic. Why does that matter? Because according to California law, the state of emergency must be terminated at the earliest possible date. And all of the orders and regulations that came from that state of emergency are also terminated. So in California, that means no more social distancing, no more stay at home, no more masks, no more schools closed, no more businesses closed, no more parks and beaches closed. It's back to normal when the state of emergency is terminated. Now, I know you're hearing about these phases and steps, and we have to go slowly, and we have to take caution, so on and so forth. That's not by law. Those might be good ideas, but that needs to be done by the state legislature, according to California law, and likely according to the law in your state as well. You can Google it. You can research the Emergency Services Act in your state. So I want to read to you from the Emergency Services Act in California. It says that the state of emergency can only be called if the threat overwhelms the current resources of the state. Now, healthcare workers have been being laid off in California. Therefore, there is no threat to overwhelm the resources of the state. Therefore, the state of emergency is invalid and unlawful. Furthermore, California state law says that the state of emergency has to be terminated at the earliest possible convenience. This is 63 days of stay at home. 63 days of the state of emergency with no grounds. The grounds for the state of emergency under California law would be for an epidemic. There is no epidemic. And you might say, yeah, but it worked. We stayed home. It worked. That might be, but there is no epidemic. And according to law, we don't have to stay home. And according to law, the businesses don't need to remain closed. And according to law, the schools don't need to remain closed. And according to law, I don't need to stand 6 feet away from you. And according to law, I don't need to wear a mask to go into a store. Now, you may want to do those things. You may prefer to stay home. You may prefer to stand 6 feet away from me. You may prefer to wear a mask. You may prefer to keep your business closed. I'm just explaining that according to law, those things are not lawful. They are invalid and unlawful. Peggy, are you a lawyer? No, I'm not a lawyer. I'm an individual with a curious mind who wants to know why these orders and regulations have led to so many losses. Losses of business, increased child abuse, spousal abuse, suicide, increased deaths from people that didn't go to the hospital because they were too afraid to go and they had a heart attack and died at home. Friends, in California, 6,000 people died of the flu every year, every flu season. Nothing changed. 2,000, why are we doing this? Numbers in Orange County, 3.3 million people. 3.3 million people staying home and losing their jobs and livelihood out of 38 very tragic losses. That is not okay. And not only is it not okay, it is not lawful and it is not valid. Anyone can read this law. It's written quite clearly. Thousands of healthcare workers have been furloughed in the state of California. Therefore, there is no threat that is larger than the capacity of the state to handle. This isn't an opinion. This isn't my perspective. These are facts. And the law states that the state of emergency must be terminated at the earliest possible date, and all of the regulations that go with it at the earliest possible date. Furthermore, the governor has no legal standing to extend the state of emergency. Zero. He cannot declare another state of emergency related to COVID. It is illegal and unlawful. Only the legislature can extend the state of emergency, and they also need to terminate the state of emergency. According to the Emergency Services Act, if the governor takes control of food and medicine and healthcare, which he has in terms of sending ventilators and personal protective equipment to other hospitals, by law, the state of emergency terminates after 60 days. This is day 63. I wrote and I called my state senator and also my assembly person to inquire about this and why the state legislature has not convened like we've seen in other states. It is not up to Trump to open California. It is not up to Trump to close California. The only time he would have that legal authority is if we are under martial law. Each state has the ability and the legal grounding to declare the state of emergency, and in the state of California, that state of emergency must be terminated at the earliest possible date. And according to Section 8567B of the California Emergency Services Act, whenever the state of emergency has been terminated, the orders and regulations shall be of no further force or effect. I think you understand what that means. All of the orders that have come along with the state of emergency, shelter in place, I don't use that word, standing 6 feet apart from everybody, wearing masks, having all the businesses shut down, the parks and schools closed, all of those orders and regulations shall be in no further force or effect. If this concerns you, friends, contact your representatives and demand an answer for what they are doing. That's why I wanted to share this public information with you. There are countless other states and legislative bodies that are ending or extending the state of emergency. And in California, it says the temporary suspension of any statute, ordinance, regulation, or rule shall remain in effect until the order or regulation is rescinded by the governor, or when the governor proclaims the termination of a state of emergency, or for a period of 60 days, whichever occurs first. We're on day 63, friends. Just thought you wanted to know that.